Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a wonderful day of celebration here at the College of Law. My name is Kristen Adams. I'm a member of the law faculty and currently serving as interim dean, and it's my great joy to welcome you this morning. Before we begin our time of celebration, however, let us honor the memory of those who lost their lives this weekend to acts of hate in places where they should have been safe. In a synagogue in Pittsburgh and in a grocery store in Kentucky. Please join me as we stand silently as you are able for a moment of reflection and respect. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining me today as we celebrate a remarkable moment in the history of Stetson University. 6 years ago, we celebrated a milestone at Stetson when we launched the Veterans Law Institute and the Veterans Advocacy Clinic here in Gulfport. I am incredibly honored to welcome you as we celebrate another great milestone in this wonderful program today. We have a number of very special people here today to help us celebrate. Stetson University President Wendy Libby joins us today. Chief Judge Robert Davis of the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, our former colleague here on the law faculty, is here with us. We are also joined by Catherine Metrano, Acting General Counsel of the Department of Veterans Affairs. Longtime benefactor and alumnus Judge Raphael Steinhardt, student and retired U.S. Army Major Robert Kilmartin, and the former director of the Institute, a longtime and much beloved member of the law faculty, Judge Michael Allen. The Veterans Law Institute has achieved a great deal in just 6 years. The Institute formed partnerships with the University of South Florida and Department of Veterans Affairs at Bay Pines to improve its service to veterans. Stetson joined the National Law School Veterans Clinic Consortium, working across the country to improve legal representation for military veterans. Today, the director of Stetson's Veterans Law Institute serves as the consortium president. This year, Stetson joined law schools from around the U.S. at the first conference of the National Law School Veterans Clinic Consortium, or Law Schools for Vets, in Washington, D.C. Since 2012, interest in the Veterans Advocacy Clinic has grown tremendously among our students, who have done great work under the guidance of Professor and Director Stacey Ray Simcox. Approximately 10% of our student population now consists of veterans. The work of the Veterans Advocacy Clinic has helped veterans to obtain more than $14 million in back and future payments, and we want to do more. Today, we're here to celebrate the dedication of our new Veterans Law Institute, built entirely with the veteran in mind. We have paid attention to the details in building what we hope will be an inviting space that promotes a sense of wellness. We have created a comfortable, welcoming environment for both our veteran clients and our law students. We hope that our Veterans Law Institute will greatly expand the ability of our students to do the great work of serving our veterans while learning to be the very best advocates that they can be. Thank you all for joining us on this remarkable occasion. I invite you to enjoy our program. Please rise as you are able and remain standing for the posting of the colors by the American Legion Post 125 in Gulfport, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you very much. You may be seated. Please join me in welcoming Stetson University President, Dr. Wendy Libby.
Good morning, everyone. As we like to say, go Hatters. But good morning. What a gorgeous day for us to celebrate something so very important. On behalf of Stetson University, it is my pleasure to welcome you today to our new Veterans Law Clinic and Veterans Advocacy Clinic. 6 years ago, I introduced the Veterans Law Institute in its prior home across the street on 13th Avenue South. The Institute is really an extension of the values of Stetson University, which include a commitment to serve the veterans who have served us all. We are committed to offering our student veterans the opportunities they deserve through the Yellow Ribbon Program on all 4 of our campuses here in Gulfport, in Tampa, in Celebration, and in DeLand, Florida. We are among the top military-friendly universities in the country, ranked 3rd in the South. We have an active and supportive veterans organization. In fact, my husband Richard and I will be at their breakfast next Sunday at the end of our homecoming events. In the past 6 years, the Veterans Advocacy Clinic at Stetson has filled a critical role, helping veterans in our community recover millions of dollars in much-deserved and much needed benefits. Our students working in the clinic, many of them veterans themselves, have had the opportunity to serve those who serve our country. It is our honor here at Stetson to have an opportunity to work for veterans. I wonder if the students that are here who work in the clinic would just raise their hands, identify yourselves, so we can thank you for that work. I am incredibly proud of the work of Dean Adams and our Veterans Law Institute staff. Director and Professor Stacy Ray Simcox, over there, Rocky Woodhouse and Shirley Wells, the Institute's founding director, who you will hear from a little later in our program, Judge Michael Allen, formerly Professor Michael Allen, and benefactor and class of 1963 Stetson Law, Judge Raphael Steinhardt. Judge has worked with passion and determination, along with all the other folks I just introduced to you, to build what is sure to become a model for other veterans institutes across our country. The facility that I hope you've taken a little bit of a walk through, if not, after our proceedings, I hope you will do so, was built for veteran neighbors, for veteran students, for everyone who shares our commitment to help as many vets as we can. Everything from the walls to the lighting inside was carefully chosen to provide an atmosphere of wellness and in safety. That sense of wellness and safety, after all, is exactly what our veterans provide to us when they pledge their lives to protect citizens in the United States. Today is a wonderful day for Stetson University and for the veterans in our community. I'm proud to have the opportunity to say thank you to all of our veterans on behalf of Stetson University for all that you have done. Through the work of our much expanded institute, we hope to do more for you. It is now my honor to invite Chief Justice Robert Davis, a former Stetson professor, who's joining us from the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims in Washington, to come up to the podium and deliver some comments.
Good morning. Thank you, President Libby, Dean Adams, the faculty and support staff of this wonderful institution. I can't tell you how exciting this is for me to return to Stetson after leaving here in 2004 to go to Washington, D.C. Let me also welcome my colleagues from Washington, D.C., Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, to Florida, my home. And I hope you all are being treated with the kind of Florida hospitality that we like to show people. I'm going to talk just a few minutes about the intersection of lives and a legacy in law. And there are a few names I need to mention, probably many more names I need to mention, but I'll remember as many as I can. But let me just mention Dean Gary Voss, Dean Richard Dillon, Judge Steinhardt, Stephanie Vaughn, Becky Morgan, Jamie Fox, Jim Underwood, John Cooper, all people who, when I was here, really helped to form a nucleus of the Stetson faculty. And I'll mention a couple of points about Gary and about Dean Dillon, because I find some similarities that I only learned recently about how we all came to Stetson. Who would have thought in 2000, when I was on tour at Central Command up in Tampa, those of you who are familiar with it know that it covers an area of about 20 countries with 22 ethnic groups and 18 languages. It's a very unstable region of the world. I was there on a tour with the intelligence group that I was with in the Navy, and took a few minutes to come tour around Tampa Bay, and ended up seeing Stetson. Decided to call the dean at that time. At that time, I was also a full tenured faculty member at the University of Mississippi Law School, and I called up and I asked to see the dean. Gary Voss was the dean at the time. He welcomed me. I actually stopped by in my fatigues, and I can't tell you what a wonderful, kind man he was. So we chatted, and at that time I had absolutely no idea about whether or not I'd end up in Florida. When I was a child, all right, my grandparents lived in Fort Pierce. My dad was from Quincy, Florida. We drove from Iowa to Florida at least 3 times a year. And we didn't stop. This was in the 50s and the 60s. So we drove all the way through all the time. So for me to come back to Florida in 2000, and it wasn't on the West Coast, it was on the East Coast of Florida. I wasn't acquainted with the West Coast. But once I took this tour around Tampa Bay, I fell in love with Tampa Bay. I said, and I always asked my parents, why don't we live in Florida instead of in Iowa? I love Iowa, don't get me wrong. But my mom said, well, the bugs are too big and it's too hot in Florida. So, okay. So we end up in Iowa. Anyway, why don't we live in Florida? I came back in 2000. I got a chance to see the law school, and I made friends. 2 months later, Dean Voss called and said, things have changed. Can you come down and interview? And I don't think it took me a minute to book a flight back to Tampa. So after that, then I was hired as a visitor, and and the story writes itself almost. But what I learned subsequently was Gary Voss was a practitioner in Hartford, Connecticut. I'd gone to school in Hartford, Connecticut. Gary Voss had left a law practice in Hartford, successful law practice, to come to visit his pregnant sister, Suzanne. And while he was doing that, he stopped by Stetson. And he was in jeans and a t-shirt, maybe not fatigues at that point. But he stopped by Stetson, met Dean Dillon. After a conversation with Dean Dillon, he then was subsequently hired as a faculty member and ultimately became an assistant dean and the dean. And I say that and Gary, in fact, also had military experience. He had been in the Air Force as a linguist. He got a certificate from Yale. But just such a Southern gentleman. Dean Dillon, Tampa, and Gary was a Tallahassee native. Dean Dillon, a Tampa native, served in World War II. So I mention these people to say that they planted the seeds. Gary was big on international business development, employment, and labor law, and they planted the seeds of this Veterans Law Institute. So I'm talking a little bit about a legacy, an intersection of lives, and a legacy in the law. And the Veterans Law Institute is that legacy in the law of the seeds that they planted. I don't think I mentioned my colleague, Judge Allen, at the time. We were here, and I remember, and Mike will have to correct me, but I remember being either on your tenure committee or on maybe it's an annual review committee. I don't remember which one it was. But anyway, I recognized Judge Mike Allen as a professor at that time, and I knew that he was going to be great, right? What I didn't know was that he would follow me from then on everywhere I went. But I can't tell you how wonderful it is to have a Stetson colleague with me in Washington on the court. So let me now talk a little bit about the intersection of the Veterans Law Institute, and then I'll sit down. They only gave me a couple of minutes, which is not enough time usually, but it's enough time in this environment. The intersection, Veterans Law is the intersection of law, medicine, and war, right? Because you're servicing people who have put their lives on the line and for the country. And so I always like to point out this wonderful intersection of law, medicine, and war. and the work that you do in veterans law. And the Institute, in my view, is amazing. Who would have thought 18 years later from when I came here that I would be standing here as the chief judge of this court talking about a Veterans Law Institute launched by wonderful people like Stacey Ray Simcox, Michael Allen, all the faculty and staff members who helped to contribute in making this Veterans Law Institution a reality. And you're servicing 23 million veterans and their families, right? And they need a lot of help. Certainly at the administrative levels, at the VA, at the appellate levels, whether or not it's our court or the Federal Circuit or the Supreme Court, there is so much that needs to be done because, quite frankly, the administrative system is broken. It doesn't operate very well. And there needs to be a major change here. And my hope is that this institute, along with many other institutes like this, will help to make that change. When I joined the bench, I'll conclude with this. In 2004, when I joined the bench, there were no veterans law classes around the country at law schools. There were no clinics around the country at law schools. This is in 2004, right? There was one faculty person who taught a class at Catholic University. His name was William Fox. And he was the veterans law person, right? That went on for probably about 10 years. Now, I didn't know this was a growth industry. I didn't know anything about the Veterans Court. I didn't know anything about veterans law. I knew about administrative law and constitutional law and national security law, but nothing about this area. This area has boomed. There are tremendous opportunities in this field, not only of rewarding work with a noble mission, but opportunities for law students and practitioners alike. But when I joined the court in 2004, there were none of that. Finally, in 2010, there were 5 clinics around the country, right? When I joined the court, we had 15 volumes of Westlaw Reporter devoted to veterans law. Today, we're working on 30. There are probably at least, and Stacey Ray, Professor Simcox, you can tell me what the number is, probably at least 50 clinics around the country. Is that close? Servicing veterans. Now, courses around the country in veterans law. And one of the best courses was just taught in the last 3 days with, where's Zach? Zach Stoltz, where are you? Right there. And, of course, the guy who follows me around all the time, Judge Allen. Anyway, folks, this is a homecoming to me. I am so excited to be here, and I'm probably already over my 2 minutes. But I can't tell you how proud I am of the work that's going on at this institute, and I look forward to working with it. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kathy Matrano. I'm the Acting General Counsel of the Department of Veterans Affairs. I have the good fortune today to be here because the Permanent General Counsel of the Department of Veterans Affairs, Jim Byrne, has gone on to become the Acting Deputy Secretary of VA. And Jim wanted me to convey to all of you his good tidings. For those of you who don't know, Jim Byrne himself is also a proud alum of Stetson Law School and a former Marine. So hopefully you all feel that you have a great amount of affection and support coming even from Washington, D.C. this morning. So thank you all for inviting me to be here this morning. So as you know, our mission at VA is to care for veterans, men and women who have stepped up and offered to make the ultimate sacrifice, if necessary, to defend our freedom. That's not just a mission for VA. That's a mission for the entire nation, and I can think of no law school more committed to it than Stetson. I'm honored to be here this morning with all of you to open this institute. What you're doing here at Stetson is incredibly important to caring for our nation's veterans. You're setting a strong example of service for other law schools and other law firms. And, as important, you're training a whole new generation of lawyers. Because veteran well-being is more than about health care. It's more than about benefits. Veteran well-being is also about things like solving problems, like evictions, foreclosures, and child support, and mental health. And legal assistance is critical to this holistic approach. It can also be about guardianship, discharge upgrades, or outstanding warrants and fines. These are the kinds of issues that keep veterans from being able to seek employment or the VA health care they might need. These kind of issues keep veterans out of housing and prevent us from helping homeless veterans find homes. In fact, we know that based on VA's annual challenge survey, that most of the top 10 unmet needs for homeless veterans are purely legal. That's why the free legal services you provide is critical to overall veteran well-being, to veteran health care, to ending veteran homelessness, and to veteran mental health. And we know that the work that you're doing, providing veterans legal assistance at VA facilities or elsewhere, improves veterans' mental health and psychosocial outcomes. In fact, Health Affairs recently published findings that veterans receiving the benefits of medical legal partnerships observe significant improvements in housing, income, and mental health. The more legal services they received, the greater improvements in housing and mental health. Think about that. I mean, we think about the people at VA providing the services that help in mental health. We don't necessarily think about the lawyers that are the enablers that make that happen. So it's clear why legal partnerships are a department-wide and OGC-specific priority. Co-locating legal services are a best practice for VA and veterans, and we want to work with all of you to make it available in every VA facility. Today, there are over 170 free legal clinics in VA facilities nationwide. And we now have 27 formal medical legal partnerships at VA, including the incredible one that Stetson has built with the Bay Pines VA and Bay Area Legal Services. This November, VA is celebrating Veterans Day all month long through our second annual Veterans Month. During Veterans Month, we are holding all kinds of unique events across the country that holistically serve veterans. But the one I'm most excited about is the VA Office of General Counsel's Veterans Legal Clinic Week of Service. We are encouraging all government attorneys from federal agencies to volunteer at free legal clinics in VA hospitals serving veterans. And we at VA are volunteering our own time, our own pro bono, to assist veterans' legal issues. This was all really started with a colonel that started here in Stetson, believe it or not. This is the premier example that we use throughout the nation to advocate similar types of activities at law schools in every one of the states that we have. Our current general counsel and myself, and for those of you who don't know, this is a homecoming for me as well. I live here in Oldsmar, Florida, came down for this event very happily to do so, and was once part of the Bay Pines Legal Clinic, and it was actually there last year volunteering my time at one such as these. So these are the seeds that grow to Washington and that now are growing through all 50 states in the country. So I want to look at the students and the faculty here and say thank you. Thank you for inspiring us all. Thank you for helping this grow throughout the rest of the country. And thank you for helping us at VA help the veterans that so very much deserve our support.
My speech is short. It comes from my heart. I would like to acknowledge the Stetson law students, past, present, and future, who have it in their hearts to assist our veterans, because that's what it is all about. Helping others, and especially helping our veterans who have served us. Being part of a Stetson lawyer and student is giving back, and that is why we are all here today. Thank you.
Good morning, distinguished guests, faculty and staff, students, and members of the community that have joined us. So I had a big surprise today, but unfortunately I found out that I didn't win the Powerball, so you won't be getting your $10 million, but, you know, here we are. I just want to take a quick second here, and there's a lot of great people that have done a lot of amazing things over the years to make this happen and for us to be here where we are today. But I want to take just a moment to thank three people in particular, and that's Rocky, Shirley, and Stacey Ray Simcox. Let's give them a hand real quick because they don't get enough credit. I've known these three individuals for about a year, and I see what happens every day and the work that gets put into it. And it went into overdrive the last 7 or 8 months because of this amazing building that we have behind us. You have Miss Shirley's working in there. Basically, if you're military, she's like the sergeant major in there. She's making sure everything happens. Rocky's the guy behind the scenes, making sure that the veteran claims and such are going through properly with the VA. And Professor Simcox is a professor teaching classes. She's trying to lead our clinic. And then she's got about 10 other jobs. Quality control manager, contractor's assistant. I think she might have picked up a hammer a few times and put some of this together. So just an amazing job by them. And why I thank them is I feel like I'm up here to represent all the veterans that have attended Stetson in the past and will attend Stetson in the future. This building is beautiful. And the reason why is coming from experience, serving over 20 years, being in wars, having injuries. There's so many small things that you don't think about until you have those injuries. And this building really takes care of a lot of those issues. Just walk through, and I've talked to some people, and everybody's picking on me about the lighting, but I am in love with the lighting. And not to pick on the VA, but I spent a year in the VA hospital. I was in some pretty bad explosions, and I had problems with light sensitivity. You walk into a hospital, and it's 1940s fluorescent lights with big ballasts, and I had to walk around with sunglasses. I thought I was part of the mob for about a year. This building, you walk in, and the light is soft. The mood is soft. Everything in there is a feeling of comfort, a feeling of wellness. Just the way that the rooms were designed, the windows, everything was strategically placed. And again, I'm going back to those three individuals that I thanked. They were behind a lot of that, of course, with a lot of people doing contracting and all that other engineering and stuff that I have no idea about. But it's really an amazing place and an amazing opportunity for veterans in the future. The next I want to talk about is the students past and present and future that are doing so much for my brothers and sisters that served. You have folks, especially our Vietnam veterans and our Korean War veterans and the few World War II veterans that are left, that have a lot of injuries that over the years they were just ignored. Like when I came in the 90s, and it wasn't really popular to go say you were hurt or admit that you were hurt. And a lot of these men and women are coming forward now today to talk about those injuries, a lot of those hidden injuries like PTSD or things that our country didn't really do a good job with, like Agent Orange. And we have folks that are coming down with cancer and diabetes. And a lot of these people for years have been turned down and told that, there's nothing wrong with you or there's nothing we can do to help you. And this school, led by Stacey Ray Simcox and all the wonderful people that started prior to her, has given these folks a voice. And they have a voice now where they can come here and they can look and they can say, wow, everyone's turned me down. I have this cancer. We believe you and we want to help you. And these students that are working really hard, 20 to 25 hours a week in this clinic, to ensure that these folks get the benefits, and it's all free. We do not take money from the veterans, and that is a huge thing, because a lot of the people we have that come in, sadly have become homeless or don't have anyone else to turn to or have problems with drugs and alcohol. There's a few students that are standing right out here, in this crowd that I've had the pleasure to work alongside that. One of them has gotten people into homeless shelters and given them opportunities and set them up when they get this $100,000 worth of back pay that they earned, get them a trust where they won't, utilize it poorly. Another student helped a gentleman that couldn't prove that he was in Korea at all, but he was by the DMZ. And she spent all this time researching and found it. And after years and years of this person not getting the benefits they deserved, was able to get him over $100,000. I mean, think about that. Imagine if someone owed you $100,000 20, 30 years ago, and you're just waiting for it. And because of the hard work and the way that we have this place set up and all the people that came before us and the people in the future, this clinic is going to give the opportunity to help even more people in the community and nationally to achieve that goal of helping the veterans and always keeping them first. So it's not just the students that are coming here like myself that are veterans, it's the community as a whole. So I want to thank you, and I want to God bless all of you, and God bless America. Thank you and have a great day.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. It's a great homecoming for me to be back here, and I want to start out by thanking President Libby, combined with somebody who hasn't been mentioned yet today, but I think is really important, who is my former colleague, Professor Roy Gardner. Roy Gardner, 6 years ago, was serving in the same role as Dean Adams is now, being an interim dean, which might be one of the hardest jobs in the world to do, because you can't let an institution not move forward, but you're the interim dean, and so you don't want to lock it into place in a certain direction. And so Roy had this balance, and with the support of the university and President Libby, in literally the last month that he was associate interim dean, he said, nope, we're actually establishing this institute and we're starting it. And then Chief Judge Castle from the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims came down and just a few hundred yards away dedicated the institute. And I couldn't imagine that it would, well, there's a lot that's happened in the last 6 years that I actually couldn't imagine. And so, but I couldn't imagine how successful this institute has been. And so I just want to spend just a couple of seconds about some things. You've heard some names. You've heard Professor Simcox, Stacey Ray Simcox, Rocky, Shirley, and then I think I saw her here, but maybe it's because, so I was sitting in the sun over there, and I turned to the president and I said, oh my God, is it hot? I was having flashbacks to graduation in the courtyard, for those who do that. And she whispered in my ear, she said, just think about this when you're back in Washington in the snow. So I felt better about the sun. But I think I saw Trista Miller. Was she here? Trista? Okay. Way in the back. Trista was in Rocky's position before Rocky. And those people established this place. Now, don't get me wrong. This building is fantastic. We just heard why it was fantastic. It was designed with a client in mind. It's going to be a tremendous working space. To think that this building just a few months ago is where we hung the lawnmowers, and now it looks like this. I mean, it's really quite incredible. But you know what? The building is just a shell. Sort of like what we say about people, not to get religious for a second, right? But the body is just a shell. There's something in it, heart, soul, whatever you want to call it. It's the heart and the soul that matters at the end of the day. And it's the people that are in that building that matter. And so, starting with the people who provide the services, or in the words that they came up with as the motto, honoring their service with ours. Professor Simcox, Rocky, Trista, Shirley, you do more because you don't just help the people that come in the door. You help law students understand that they can do it too. Right? This is something that can stay with people forever. And you're not easy on them, but you give them the tools that let them know, and more importantly, you give them the ability to understand it is important. And it's not just for the people, you know, I was speaking to somebody beforehand joking. They were asking how it is being a judge. And I basically said, well, it's sort of like being a parent. They didn't know what I was talking about. And I said, well, because when I became a parent, I realized that my parents were frauds because they were making it up their entire way because I had no idea what I was doing. And being a judge is a little bit like the same thing, right? We don't get any training. You just sort of say, hey, here's your robe, and off you go. And by the way, as an aside, and I will end, but as an aside, they really should give training in putting on a robe, because normally our court hears oral arguments in 3-judge panels. My 2 colleagues are here. For reasons I won't bore you with, the first oral argument I had was me as a single judge by myself. So our clerk of court, who is out there, was back in the robing room with me and then went out. So I thought, how hard can it be? I have to put on a robe and walk through a door. My robe got caught in my tie. Wouldn't zip up, wouldn't zip down, and I thought, I have got to get this happen. The tie doesn't exist anymore because we yanked it out because I still had the top. That's all you could see. But this is a small, silly example of how, right, we just get to sort of make up what we do. But here's the thing. People need to understand that they can do it, that they can actually serve those who served us. Here's the key. Even if you didn't serve yourself. You know, I can't, my 2 colleagues who are here, Judge Falvey, who we haven't identified, the most junior judge here on our court, and Chief Judge Davis, the most senior, both served. Right? And I remember distinctly calling my friend, my best friend on the phone, in connection with my nomination to be on this court, and saying, you know, I am a total fraud because I didn't serve. And my friend did, serve 7 years on a nuclear submarine. And he said something back to me that has always stuck to me, and I think it's the kind of thing that Professor Simcox and her group instill in students, which is, you can serve in your own way, even if you've lost the opportunity to serve as they did. Don't get me wrong, I am not for a second putting myself into the category of Mr. Kilmartin, because I know about your background, and I will not explain to the group what it is. But I shouldn't be standing here talking after you at all. But the best I can do is serve in the way I can now. And instilling in students that that is something they can do is going to pay benefits for years to come. Because the people that they help in there, it literally will change their lives. I am so envious of people like Professor Simcox, because you and your students and the people who work with you get to actually look a person in the eye and you know that you have changed that life. So I may sit up in Washington and we may write these great opinions that set what the law is, that the VA will follow. But you get to change lives one life at a time, which is even more powerful. All the students in the purple shirts. And so at the end of the day, I just want to thank all of you for coming, because this place truly does honor those who gave service with service of their own. And at the end of the day, we can't ask anything more. So thank you very much.
President Libby, Chief Judge Davis, Catherine Metrano, Judge Steinhardt, Robert Kilmartin, the magnificent Judge Michael Allen, after whom no one should ever agree to speak, and the entire Veterans Law Institute, I thank you for your tremendous support in making this facility and the great work that we do here a reality. I also want to make sure to thank all of the members of the Stetson community who you haven't heard from this morning, who have quietly invested so much time and care and love in making this day possible. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the grand opening of Stetson's new Veterans Law Institute. Please rise for the retiring of the colors, and afterward, I invite you to join us for the ribbon cutting of the new facility.
Okay, everybody look at the camera for one. Smiles. Great. Fantastic. All right, nice. Okay. And here we go. Here we go. Is it going to cut? Cut? Not yet. There it is.